All right. Well, good morning, Facebook friends, and good morning, our friends on our podcast. This is Patrice Tsague. Good morning, good morning, good morning, good morning, our Facebook friends and our friends on our podcast. This is Patrice Tsague. I'm here with my good friend, Desiree Young. Desiree, welcome to the podcast. How are you this morning?
I'm great this morning. How are you?
I am well. I am well. Desiree
Good.
is from Louisiana.
Yes.
The state with the beautiful, just good food. I mean, I've been there once, and I
Great
tell you,
food.
you guys have good food.
Yeah,
Good
we always
food.
say we don't just eat to live, but we live to eat.
I know good food. Good party,
Yeah.
but you don't get into the party, right? You're a good girl.
It's a part of the culture. It's
It's a
called
part of the.
community. It's community.
It's
It's
community.
delighting.
I love it. Well, today we want to talk about COVID-19, the stimulus package, and its impact on small businesses, and how do you really prepare for it? Desiree is a business expert in the area of working with the SBA, Small Business Administration, and helping entrepreneurs to be able to take advantage of what advantage that they have with the SBA. She's a coach, a business consultant, and I'm going to let her kind of introduce herself in a minute. But the reason I invited Desiree is because not only is her expertise in that, she's also a sort of a trainer. I'm still trying to get her to teach a class, but that's another story. But Desiree also, she's been through Katrina, as you guys know. So she understands disaster. She understands crisis. She looks too young to have been through Katrina, but she has really, I'm telling the truth. And how I got to know Desiree, I think it's an interesting story. A client of mine connected me with a client of hers back in the day. That was like when we were, what, 15 years old? It was a long time ago.
Yes, definitely. Definitely
And
15-ish.
and and I began to help this young lady. And unbeknownst to me, the person that had come alongside to help her as well was none other than Desiree Young. And Desiree, you've been helping small businesses since that time. And
Correct.
and
Correct.
what really what just warmed me up to you was your heart and just how you know I tend to boldly charge for my services and I am a pastor and I make a difference between the pastoral and the business consultant work. I mean, we have a lot of people, but I'm a little bit more let me say I'm a little bit more intentional, but you
Sure.
just go at it with a heart.
Sure.
I mean, you're like when I first started, you haven't changed one bit.
Oh, God
So
bless you.
yeah,
Yeah.
and so it's just awesome to just know your heart for the small business, small entrepreneur. So Desiree, before we get into our podcast, I want our viewers to understand kind of your story and kind of how who you are and how you got into business. Tell us about Venture Walk and how you got into
Absolutely.
the space.
Well, it's interesting you mentioned, and I so appreciate your talking about my heart for business. I still kind of I say the term that it was accidental, although we know with God there are no accidents. I was an engineer. That was my training in undergrad school. Had gone to school for business, but prior to that, really was much more accustomed to kind of working within the whole chemical industry and also the oil and gas industry. And so going to business school was really the catalyst of my kind of, I call it drinking the Kool-Aid a little bit,
Yeah.
of recognizing small business. I had a specific concentration in entrepreneurship, but admittedly, I was determined to not become one because I thought entrepreneurs were crazy. I thought to myself, who does this? Who sacrifices? And this is before entrepreneurship was sexy and cool. All
Yeah.
right. So this is many, many moons ago. And I remember thinking, I wouldn't mind kind of maybe helping them, but I don't want to get sucked in. I don't want to get pulled in because it's the vortex and you don't want to get pulled in. Blue pill, red pill. I don't want any of that.
Yeah.
And literally was finishing business school in Spain. I'd done a study abroad, came back to the States and stopped home, New Orleans being home, and with the intention of I would move on from there and maybe work, at a big consulting firm or something. But obviously God said differently. And that is when you and I got an opportunity to officially, unofficially meet. And Hurricane Katrina happened. And admittedly, my first reaction was, you know, these little projects of working with small business owners, maybe that wasn't a great idea. I really completely doubted. I'm like, God, clearly I've missed this. And I went running back to what I knew, which was, okay, let's get a job. And my then mentor, my professor from business school, I had evacuated to Houston where I have family and then migrated up to Dallas. I had just been in Dallas for my business degree, for my MBA, and went and sat in the office of my mentor and said, Jerry, here's my resume, yeah, can you help me? And he says, of course, which I know you can relate to this, Patrice. He says, I think you should work on your business plan. What is it that you were doing? Now, I had a lot of time on my hands. We couldn't get back into New Orleans. So I'm like, okay, I'll oblige him so he can really look at my resume for real. So I take the next few days and do so. I come back into his office with what I thought was a beautiful masterpiece. And I hand it to him and he doesn't even crack the report. He slams it on the desk and says, Desiree, in his old Texas, Dallas drawl, this is the greatest opportunity you have right now. Wow. And he says, if I were you, I would go back to New Orleans with hip boots on. I would allow myself to be swimming with the alligators, and I would be on every media outlet talking about what small businesses need right now. And I think it shocked me. But I heard him and I thought to myself, so you're not going to look at my resume, right? I think it took some time to get it. And as God would have it, I started making phone calls and literally within a few weeks had a contract back in New Orleans with the Small Business Development Center. And I was working in FEMA recovery centers for several months thereafter, and specifically working with small business owners through that then SBA process. So I do not work with the SBA. I always want a small business administration. I want people to understand that. I am an independent consultant. I do work with programs that are funded by the SBA. And so we get an opportunity to hear from them, but they are the authority, definitely in times like this. They they use and allow different organizations, such as like in this area anyway, the Urban League is one of the many organizations I'm excited to be connected to. I mentioned the Small Business Development Center. That's what I was connected to then. They become the first responders, if you will, for businesses when things like this happen. And so I'm fortunate to be connected to those. And that's really the premise of what I'll be talking about today.
Yeah, and of course, the SBA, I think, is just a great program because they kind of strategic position themselves to leverage local distribution channels.
Absolutely.
And consultant like yourself, not to reinvent the wheel, they don't get a lot of credit. I know people like me don't always speak well of government, but the SBA is one of those programs that I think it's, when done well, it works real well.
No question. And, to your point, it's definitely been one of the many influencers. You mentioned, for me, that is where my company Venture Walk was born, quite frankly, in the midst of those sometimes moldy. There was literally in the FEMA recovery centers, they would be doing work probably in the back. So we would have to move because the work would move up to where we were sitting, because every location in New Orleans basically was flooded in some respect. So we would be there for as long as we could, and then we'd migrate to another location. But Venture Walk and what I do now for small business owners and the organizations that are set to train and teach them is literally help businesses understand in times like this how to recover, but in most cases, how to reinvent themselves. And so I'm usually really in the lane of sales and selling and positioning and helping businesses really understand who it is that their market is, what's their message, and what's the media or the channel that they're using to communicate it on.
So your business really took root in a crisis.
It sort of did.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah. I got a message that I'm working on that I'll be doing the next couple of months called For Such a Time as This, How to Stand Out in the midst of a crisis. And you really, you live that message. Your mentor taught you how to stand out in the midst of a crisis.
No question. I mean, and I'm so grateful for that, because admittedly, you know, if there's anything I want people to understand, I'm not going to pretend like I was a willing participant in the beginning. You know, I was,
You
know,
were like
and
Esther.
I was like Esther. Let's be clear. So you mentioned for
he
such
was
a
your
time,
Mordecai.
no question. And you know, and there was a choice to be made.
Yeah.
And I'm grateful for taking the small leap and for God having the grace and the patience to enable me to really look at what those next steps were and walking through it. And it's continuing to be a walk. You know, it's hardly a single decision. I feel like, especially in business, sometimes there are daily decisions to be made, you know, in the midst of it. People really believe when you decide to be in business, for many of us, there is a decision to stay, there's a decision to grow, there's a decision, you know, and so we have to recognize all of the decisions that come into play.
I guess that's why your name, Venture Walk.
Yes.
Is that daily walk of, you know, do you
absolutely
start, do you stay, do you keep, do you grow, do you, I like
absolutely that. I believe owning a business, it may not be a walk in the park, but it can absolutely be, you know, the adventure of a lifetime. And that's really what I believe this can be. Sometimes it's a jog, sometimes it's a sprint. But if you kind of took the summary of all of it, it's the consistency that really enables you to kind of see those different stages of growth, similar to what your program teaches. You know, there are those stages of growth.
Yeah.
Well, oftentimes, you know, there's not the same level of speed.
That's right.
It's the consistency, and that's what walking represents to me. It's the consistency, and it's that determination and commitment to continuing.
I want to do a book with you, Desiree. I just thought about that.
Oh, wow. You do this all the time, Patrice. I love this.
I do. I want to do a book with you on how, you know, I wanted us to do a book together on how to power people to take advantage of small business resources.
Got it.
Then we can do that because my audience don't often think about small business resources, and they should.
Oh, should they ever?
I've never felt government to be more relevant than right now.
Yeah.
And I think we who are conservative, we tend to dismiss government, but government has a place. And I want, you know, and so we're going to work on that. That's a project that I want you and I to work on.
Let's do it. Let's do it. And it's not just government, by the way. You know, I mean, sometimes the government's purpose is to fund programs and organizations. And so to your point, I agree. So many miss out on that either because they don't know or there's a thinking of what those types of resources are. So I appreciate you saying that. Yeah,
yeah. Desiree, you're smart, you're young, you're beautiful, you got just good educational pedigree, but yet you threw yourself into this space of uncertainty in ministry, and it's not come without a cost for you.
Sure.
But what keeps you going?
That's a great question. Admittedly, there have absolutely been significant points in time. I mean, at this point, it's been over 15 years. There have been times where I have attempted to quit. Sometimes, you know, it's kind of the joke is that I either quit or fire myself. I do believe it's been in part for me recognizing that for me, this idea of business has definitely been a bit more than a career, a lot more than a job, which is what I was seeking, like I mentioned so many years ago. God has really started to show me that it is in part ministry. Mm-hmm. And for some reason that almost is easier to accept than simply the piece itself. Because here's what I've run into, you know, there are points in time where maybe the income wasn't what it could be. It wasn't what I saw other people being able to do, or it wasn't what I was expecting from like when I was an engineer. And so it was easy then to say, you know, and even business would teach you, well, maybe you need to abort this, right? Or you need to pivot, or it needs to be changed. And so had it not been God also showing me that this was a bit more, that he's the source and he was using the business as the conduit, but likewise that this business was a conduit for me for ministry of people. Well, when it now had that duality, then my decisions had to be based on something more than simply numbers. Not that numbers were not important, because God does all things in excellence, but it was also, it helped me to recognize I couldn't, again, solely decide on that. So what's kept me going is God showing me my own identity and who I am and who I'm meant to serve, and understanding what the business's purpose is in that bigger space, while not allowing myself to only be identified and only be seen as just what the business is. You know, the business is not my life. I'm grateful for it being one aspect of that, but what has kept me going is understanding from God just who I am, and understanding my purpose in life, and understanding what role this particular piece has in it. Because it's also taught me to not be married to it, so that if God chooses to change my role and chooses to change what I should be able to do, I'm not so married to being a consultant or being a business owner that I'm now reluctant to that. But for a long time, you know, it was a love-hate relationship, quite frankly. You know, I felt like I'm
because you're an unwilling entrepreneur. I mean, you and
yeah.
Most engineers are at the end of the day.
Yes, we are.
Because you're not wired for it.
Not really. Hardly wired for risk. That's for darn sure. You know what I mean? So, you know, and that was the tough part. I felt like I was so trying to change myself into the entrepreneurs that I was literally working with. You know, it was just the weirdest thing. They would be, you know, so passionate and you know, they're just willing to leap. And I'm thinking, no, let's look at these numbers. Let's think about this. And I was literally upset about that. I wanted to be that way, and I thought I needed to be that way. Hence the whole idea of losing my own identity, not realizing that how God had made me was in and of itself a gift and a strength and a contribution to the very work I was doing. And so much of this came with acceptance of who I am and how he's made me, and recognizing my place in this, instead of now trying to conform to the very space. You know, when he talks about not being conformed to this world, it's easy to believe, you know, oh, that means don't party or don't drink. But it could even mean in the community you're in, it doesn't mean you have to be like everyone else. And that for me was, you know, just such an incredible experience to learn and to glean and to finally just start to take on that I can be who he has made me, and it is absolutely enough. And that I do not have to overfunction and overwork to gain his approval and love that is given to me. Who I am is enough in this. And as a result, then my gifts all automatically make room. I mean, that in of itself is what has kept me in it, but it's also not learning that, which is what almost got me out of it, if that makes sense.
Wow. Yeah, it does make a lot of sense. Now, you later on went through biblical entrepreneurship, and you even went through the certification course.
Yes.
How was that experience for you?
Man, you know, so I, again, being the engineer entrepreneur, so kept things separate. You know, my whole spirituality and kind of the work world. I mean, literally, I did not want the two to mix, because I did not want to be that weird Christian. You understand what I'm saying? The Christian that showed up to talk about sales numbers and all of a sudden, let us pray. You know, I mean, I did not want, so I worked very hard to keep those things separate. And so walking through, certainly coaching with being coached by you, walking through the entire biblical entrepreneurship program taught me how really our lives should not be compartmentalized. You know, how we are, when we're bringing our entire selves, we should be bringing God with us, right? We're not like, okay, God, I'm about to go into this client room. You know, I'll leave you at the door and I'll pick you up when I leave out. But it taught me what it meant to be a biblical entrepreneur, that it wasn't the idea of putting the Bible on top of it. It was the idea of living out what the Bible says and its principles, and now allowing my mindset to be adjusted, and at times enabling that to override again what conventional business said. Because understanding when a person is in business and they are clearly working, living, they're working, living in Christ, it is different. And so to pretend that it's just a person that's in business that also believes in Christ versus a Christian who has the Lord living in them, and now the business, everything they touch has that flavor in it. There's a distinction. And so for me, it was learning how to marry those worlds and learning how to show up fully versus, like I said, separately. And so it was changing. It was changing for me.
Desiree, we're going to have to do this in two episodes because I've got so much more questions for you, and I'm looking at the time here. So we're going to do as much as we can, but I want you back because you're so good.
I appreciate that.
But you called me on Saturday. You had divorced me for a while, and then Saturday I get this phone call, and we talked for like almost 2 hours.
Yes.
Part of your motivation calling was to challenge me to do something. Your exact words were, Patrice, I know that you want to make sure people value services and that you don't.
Yeah.
And then you said, but now it's not the time. And I had just finished a communication going out to our, part of it, so the audience understand, I've struggled up a hill to try to get the church to understand the importance of monetizing.
Yes.
That a working word that is higher. And that's the mantle that I want to die on. But I think
it is a worthwhile one. I want to be clear.
Because the church often, I'm a Christian, I love Christians, but Lord Jesus, when I get to heaven, I'm gonna have to talk to Jesus. There's often this dichotomy where we don't. Do you know how R&B got created? R&B is gospel artists that left the church because they were not valued financially.
I'm not sure I realized that, but that totally makes sense.
You follow? At the end of the day,
totally makes sense.
Create this whole industry on it. But anyway, but I had just finished a communication to our that was going to go out to our members, and literally what you challenged me was in that communication. I guess that's why I was a little bit receptive to what you said. Otherwise, I would have rebuked you.
That's how I knew it was God, because I was like, oh my gosh, that went smoother than I thought.
Yeah. So tell me, what kind of motivated you on that? And I want to share it with our audience what we're doing, and then we're going to talk about the stimulus piece. But then we won't finish today. But I'm going to take my time with Desiree because I think this is something that we have to rush. But what motivate? Why did you feel it so important, Desiree, to risk our friendship, to call the one that you forsaken a while ago, to challenge him that so?
So first I'll talk about why I didn't call sooner, because I think that was the premise, right? That was the first part of it, because I so respect you, honor you in, as you mentioned, you are a pastor, you are a servant leader, and have been such an incredible mentor to me. There was this natural thought of, dear God, how dare I, have words of, you use the term rebuke, but correction. I like correction a little bit better. I'm a words person. And so there was this, and we had this conversation, there was this concern of, would this change the dynamic of our relationship, friendship? And one of the things I have started to learn, again, we talk about this walk really recently, is that true love, care, and concern is also the ability to have the difficult conversations, and that to not have those is when we're not able to really express full love. If we just always want to keep things really, really sugary and really, really pretty and never ever go into the deep, that actually is a lack of love, care, and concern, And so that was really the piece that moved me. I thought to myself, we could stay in this safe zone, but then there is not the ability first to grow, and potentially, there could be potential danger for you. So how could I be really expressing true love for you if I'm clear relative to what I know God had led me to say, but more so the eyes that he's given me to see what's going on in the marketplace and the opportunity for those of us who are set for such a time as this, to impact our country, our world for Christ in business. How could I not say anything? Who am I? I'm not being a good consultant. But I'm also not being a good Christian, a good sister. I'm forsaking those roles by not doing so. And so arriving at that point was what motivated me. And quite frankly, the truth in it was that I likewise was getting penalized for not doing so, because it was no longer, there was I won't go into the details, but there was a situation that had happened, and it wasn't a major deal, but it was just, it was uncomfortable, you know? And I was talking about this with a friend of mine separately, and then mentioned, you know, yeah, I know I really need to call Patrice. I mean, this has been months. And she says, that's it. This situation occurred because you have forsaken something you need to do. I'm like, gotta call you back. You know, I mean, that was literally in that moment. And that was when that call happened. I'm like, okay, let's not have this happening. And I love how God does that. You know, he gets our attention. And I want to be really clear. This is not the suffering message. You know, this is not the punishment message, but God allows us to get it. And I love how patient he is. And he continues, he pursues us. He pursues us. And that is a trait that I've been asking him about. My ability now to pursue when that is necessary to pursue. So that was what was behind that.
This is what I love about you. Your heart so comes across so clearly. There's just that innocence and that pure passion. Desiree, never lose that, because that is your gift. And I know that for people like yourself, sometimes people don't always value that because this world does not reward that. Yeah. And there are many times where you feel on the bad end of the stick because of who you are. But that is your gift, and that's how God wired you. And that's what I appreciate and love about you.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that.
Well, I'm
not gonna cry on this Facebook Live though.
I want to share with our audience what we're doing. And then unfortunately, we're gonna have to wrap up because I'm gonna have to have you come back.
Let's do that. And it's even better.
For the entrepreneurs out there, Nehemiah is taking this thing very seriously. We recognize, as Desiree reminded me on Saturday, that it is a time such as this. She was kind of like her mentor to me and reminding me of what we should be doing. And I receive it. God has spoken to me that morning, even as I was contemplating, because, you know, we do work globally, and the work that we do, I'm always mindful of how to navigate resources. And there are times we can get so focused on the need of the work that we lose sight of the work.
Yeah.
But what we have done is I did a message titled 7 Keys to Thriving During a Crisis that's now available for all. If you just go to our website, you should be able to find it. Not just email our office, somebody will lead you to it. That just kind of provides you 7 basic steps and principles to help you get through this process. And then I have another message coming out in the next several weeks or so called How to Stand Out in Midst of Crisis, where I'm going to use the story of of Esther to kind of walk through how she stood out. And as you heard Desiree's story, she was trying to stand out during the Katrina and that birth venture walk. So there are huge opportunity in midst of crisis. We also understand the importance of providing supportive encouragement. And so we have a prayer and worship forum in our e-community platform. If you're not a part of that, the community, just email your prayer and praise to us. We'll make sure we're praying for it. We get together as staff every Monday and pray and make an intercession for our friends and those that we serve. We want to lift you up in prayer. We have a Recovery 19 forum where we put in all the resources there, and that's public as well. You can find it on our blog at nehemiahprice.org, where for those of you who need information and resources, one place for entrepreneurs to find the resources. We also have live groups on a weekly basis that's free of no cost, where you get together with other entrepreneurs in devotion and prayer time and study. Just again, go to our website and learn about that and sign up for a live group that of like-minded people and entrepreneurs during this time. We have a recovery discount. We're providing 50% off on all of our products and services from now until May 31st, except for our membership fees for the online community. And so just whatever you want to buy on our website, just put Recovery 2020 and it will give you immediately 50% off. And we're doing that to May 31st. We may extend it if things do not get better, but that's the date for now. Also, 100% of our product and services programs, are now online. And we also work with our partners around the world in every country where we have presence to give them access to our online platform so that they can make sure that what they're doing is online as well. We have an annual conference called Nehemiah Week 2020 that was going to be in Mexico City. We're moving it digitally. It's going to be offered online at a very reduced cost. Matter of fact, if you sign up for it before May 31st, you can get as low as a little over $100. I mean, that's how cheap it's going to be. That's a $900 conference. We also working to, that's why I have Desiree here, to help entrepreneurs understand how do you access capital, because the real issue right now is going to be, how do I cash flow my business while believing God for the market to come back, while believing God for customers to come back. And so from SBA resources to other resources, and we ourselves, we also work with our investors to see if we can make sure that we have on our own fund capital to make it available to entrepreneurs. And Desiree and I are going to talk about the SBA component of it on the next podcast. You want to stay tuned for that. Also, other support, we have our chaplain, Richard Zilke, who's doing 30-minute coaching and prayer time. And so the point is this: we're here for you, whether you're a client, whether you're a member, whether no matter who you are, just email our office. Our team has been instructed to find a way to help, and so that is our time right now. Just as our government is doing a stimulus, we're doing our own stimulus, and we encourage all entrepreneurs to do their own stimulus. So what Des, in a sense, shared with me on Saturday is not just a message for me, it's a message for all of us. It's sincere, all of us who find ourselves in any position of privilege. How you define privilege? Privilege is not having a lot of money. Privilege is knowing that you've been blessed by God to be in a position where you can help somebody else. That is privilege. And so I want to encourage you to turn this thing upside down, stand out, and be of service. Do what Desiree's mentor said to her during Katrina. It's not a time to run away from the disaster. It's time to run into disaster and help somebody else. Desiree, our time is up, but I do want you to say just what word of encouragement would you say right now to an entrepreneur who's listening and who just need that encouraging word right now? You've been through Katrina, you made it through it. What would you say to those listening to remind that they can make it through it right now as well?
Sure. You know, the truth is God, regardless as to what events are happening, and his love for us does not change. And so this really is an opportunity to hear him. He is still speaking. And this is an opportunity really to allow that love to engulf us for wherever it is. I know so much now is the fear, and obviously the information we're hearing is real. Some of it is real, but God is still God and sovereign. And so the greatest thing I can say right now is really allowing day by day, and sometimes hour by hour, more and more opportunity to get into worship, to get into praise, to get into speaking, and honestly, even bringing your fears and concerns to him. That is the space. Let's reduce a little bit of the media and the intake of information and start to really match and give even more attention in quiet time with him, and bringing our families alongside as well with the same thing. That is great for good times and for times that we're going through right now, but it is where our peace resides. And that is what we're needing currently. So I want to encourage business owners to spend equal time with that as they do in looking at their numbers or talking to employees. Let's also give that time with God, because he will direct even in this time.
Desiree, I am proud to call you friend. You are so good.
Thank you so much. God
well,
bless you.
You heard it, guys, from Desiree. Just do what she said. Listen, if you enjoy this podcast, you want more information, how we can walk alongside you and help you walk out your venture. This is your first. How did they get in touch with you, real quick?
Great question. So venturewalk.com, I do have obviously all of the contact information that's listed there. One of the many things that I'm excited about is I have a webinar that I'm doing every 2 weeks or so called Venture for Life. So the ability to connect either here on Facebook, LinkedIn under Desiree H. Young, connect with me, and I'll ensure that you are getting that information on how to join me. So that's pretty much it. But venturewalk.com is my website, and it's the best first step.
You want to connect with her. If you're in Louisiana, you would do well by connecting with her. She knows some stuff. Desiree, we're going to have you back. So I'm going to coordinate your schedule to have maybe tomorrow or Friday. We're going to have you back. We got to finish the discussion. Well, guys, I hope you enjoyed it. Listen, I want to encourage you that you want to work and do what God has called you to in such a way that one day you can hear those wonderful words. Well done, good and faithful servant. You've been faithful with a few things, and God has made you ruler over much. We love you so much. Stay safe and stand out. God bless you. Love you guys so much. Desi, thank you so much, dear.
Thank you.